Hi, this is Jim Cranston from 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com, the podcast and website about reimagining your life. Thanks for joining me today to talk about, well, kind of a public service announcement about new and improved phishing techniques, ways to try and get your information, your personal information and banking information, also known as, just going and stealing your information. So let's get started. If you like what you hear today, please leave a like, subscribe, tell your friends, send me a message. Tonight, I had planned to talk about the experience of 3 weeks of being away with essentially zero social media and the almost panic it seemed to cause in the algorithms, which were sending me literally dozens of notices a day until I finally silenced them all. They were just nonstop. Wait, did you see what this person did? On and on and on and on. Literally, I get more than three or four or five an hour. Instead, we'll be talking about some advanced phishing techniques and what to watch out for. So phishing is kind of a type of social engineering where someone convinces you they're in a position of authority or knowledge and they need your help to typically prevent some sort of fraudulent action, usually involving money. And when in reality, what they're trying to do is steal that information that they're claiming to protect. So this came out of the blue this afternoon while I was walking my very excited dog, who I've just picked up from about 3 weeks in the kennel. And it was all very well done, actually, with a few bloopers that helped give it away. But honestly, partly because I'm used to listening for inconsistencies because of the nature of the work that I do in my day job. I'm an engineer, work in big projects, always have subcontractors that are trying to use little weasel words and slip things through. So I'm used to listening for things and listening for inconsistencies. Plus, obviously, I was very distracted because I was walking near a river with my very excited dog and quite unusually, I had nothing to write on. I had a pen, but nothing to write on. So I ended up writing all the information on my arm. So all the more pressure to comply with this call, but more on that in a minute. So I get this call from the Chase Bank Fraud Department, but with a local area code. And that was an immediate major red flag. Most fraud departments essentially never operate out of a local office. This was later explained as being done so people will know that it's legitimate. And in reality, it's also done because it's far easier to spoof or steal a local number or fake a local number than it is a big national or international, like a toll-free number or something like that. And I did look up the number. The number was a Chase Bank locally, but still, it's just that made no sense. So I was already a little bit on edge with the whole situation. So I'm told that my Chase savings account, the one that tied to my Zelle account, may have been compromised. That was the second big red flag. My only Chase product is not a savings account. This was explained away as, well, the bad people have already compromised all my Chase accounts, presumably including the ones I don't actually have. So then I'm told that I have to give Zelle a call to cancel the two fraudulent transactions that were identified. Only I can call Zelle and give them the cancellation numbers that he had just given to me because Chase can't do it since it's a Zelle transaction, which is the third huge problem. Any bank or credit card issuer can stop any fraudulent transaction immediately. No need to talk to the vendor presenting the fraudulent transaction. This was justified since there was a separate vendor other than the bank who presented the transaction. Kind of like, every other transaction they process and monitor every day, such as things like grocery stores, department stores, Amazon, etc. The reality is that the bank can immediately stop any transaction they want to if they consider it fraudulent or a danger of being fraudulent. But then he tells me he can transfer me right to Zelle. How lucky for me. So we go to Zelle, and the Zelle woman is, again, very professional and could readily tell me my phone number and address. The first is pretty obvious because they called me. My address probably cost them somewhere between 10 cents and for free on the open internet. So no great security breakthrough there. When I tell her that I never had a Chase product tied to Zelle, she gets very concerned because they have clearly tied my non-existent Chase account to the bank that was used for my Zelle transactions. Let me check, she says. So can you give me the name of any other banks and types of accounts that you may have tied to Zelle? I'd been very hesitant up to that point, as nothing was making really clear sense. And I'd been looking up the phone numbers as they were being displayed or given to me. They all came back as either known spam or phishing numbers or high spam or fraudulent risks. The callback number the nice woman gave to me came back as a known Zelle phishing and fraudulent scam number. Pretty nice. I said I'd call her back in a few minutes. I then called Chase directly, spoke with the delightful Tina in the fraud department, who checked my account, said there was no questionable activity and most especially nothing to do with Zelle, and asked me if I'd please report the whole thing to phishing@chase.com. And I'm going to put that number up only because I was happy to see phishing, Phishing, PH for phishing as in stealing your information, at chase.com. It made me feel a little better that Chase is actually tracking this stuff, and that they're interested to see what techniques are being used there. And so if you have a Chase account, and somebody identifies themselves as Chase, and that's not it, that's the number. But it also made me realize that probably other places as well have that now, where there's some place you can go to report phishing. I thought that was a pretty useful piece of information. And I'll write after this, I am going to write to them and give them all the details. Like I said, it was a pretty slick operation. I could see them having a pretty good success rate, even with fairly tech savvy people. You know, the whole transfer from one person to the other and everything else, different background noises in the two, but probably both working from home. Nice little side job, ripping people off. But so some super big important points came out of this whole thing. Like I said, this is a pretty slick two-party operation with an escalation between the groups and the knowledge of what each party had said, making it all sound quite official, like you're really talking to a bank and they were working with Zelle to try and put an end to this. Plus, if you were already flustered, right, they were talking about a pair of transactions totaling $5,000, it'd be easy to mistake their confidence for credibility. There was never any hesitancy on anything else, and they weren't super pushy, but that it was urgent, very urgent. Everything was very urgent. It was very telling that the crook, who they could identify by name, had a name that was similar to a common name in the country I had just returned from. That may have been coincidence, but I suspect it was based upon recent knowledge of my activities. Do not underestimate the ability of thieves to gather recent knowledge about your activities. If you have had anything questionable happen to your social media account, this happened to a friend of mine, I've talked about this before. As it turns out, she speaks Spanish as one of her languages. They had people read back through her entire account for months, literally months, within an hour or so, finding all the things that had happened, and put together an amazing cover story that they then used to send to other people, talking about how some recent information in her life that happened to involve me needed these other people to send money to help me out. This happened in under an hour. They went back, read in a different language, not English, not whatever country they're from, but in Spanish, all her activities, put together this whole story and sent it out. And people panicked. It obviously was her because they had all this personal information. Don't be put off. Don't underestimate how much information they can gather about you in minutes, if not an hour. It was an amazing amount of stuff there, and I would be not the least bit surprised that somebody in the area where I was has a little side job of passing this information along to various people, and they can put together as part of a compelling story why you should be concerned that some illegal activity is happening to your accounts. If you can't do checks on the information they're giving you, don't be bashful about telling them that you will not be providing any information that you can verify who they are. This is super important. Ask for callback numbers and check them as they give them to you. As the lovely Sierra was telling me how I could reach her back, I was typing that number into Google, which came back as a major spam alert claiming to be Chase Bank, which it was not. Or I'm sorry, Zelle, which it was not. Just be very proactive in moving ahead. If there's any inconsistencies at all, don't tell them about the inconsistencies, which I incorrectly did, but instead say you need time to call your bank's fraud department. Although in my case, it worked out pretty well since their responses just made it more obvious they were lying. Do call your bank directly. If they say, well, no, you already have the fraud department. Then say, great, file a case number. We'll pick it up with another person. You really have to be persistent and proactive. Remember, although it sounds very scary, if your bank or your credit card or whomever is doing its job, they will already be on top of the fraud, and they will show that there was a fraud called to you. And if you call back and you say, I want to talk to somebody in fraud departments, they will ask you, did you get a call from our fraud department? If they don't ask you that, chances are the first person calling was not in the fraud department. So finally, do call your bank. And once it's confirmed that they were phishing for more accurate information, do file a report with your bank so they can better intervene and help save others from getting ripped off. I can't overestimate how well done this call was. It sounded very professional. Nobody was in a panic. It's not like some of the old style bad phishing phone calls. It's kind of like, you have to do this right away. We need money. Your son's best friend was in a car accident and the hospital won't take him unless you send $5,000 right now. There was none of that. This is all, we're trying to help you. We're trying to help you, Mr. Cranston. This is an urgent issue. I mean, you don't have to talk to us right now, but if Zelle processes that transaction, that money is gone, which is also false. But nonetheless, there's this subtle pressure to do it. Don't give in to the pressure. Step back. Say, I have to call my bank. I have to call my credit card company. I have to call my accountant. Whatever it is, just say, give me a callback number. I will call you right back. If it's legitimate, they'll do that. If it's not, then it's probably just a phishing call trying to get banking information from you. So always be extra careful about giving financial information to any sort to any unknown caller. And remember, it's pretty easy for people to make fake telephone numbers that look quite real. The number they called me on actually is the phone number for a local branch of Chase. And Chase was very interested that was the number that appeared on my screen. And that they can stop with the FCC. It's illegal to do that. And so that's a big piece of information for Chase. Don't just say, oh, I'm not going to file a report. It's not worth it. Do file the reports. It helps other people and it helps stop that sort of thing. But when you first look at it, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, Chase Bank, the guy says he's from Chase. I have a Chase product. This must be Chase. Just slow down and say, why is the local branch calling me? I don't even bank at that branch. And again, be aware of any inconsistencies. I had also immediately tried to call my local office, by the way, to see if they had a local fraud department that tried to contact me. But the scam happened right after the local office closed for the night, which I kind of figured was the case. Don't be bashful for trying to check out in these things. They are trying to steal your banking information. And once they do, it's a real mess to fix. Also, if you've had any experiences with banking providers about actual or possible fraud, remember how they acted. The bank probably didn't ask for information like your account number or login numbers or any of that stuff. At most they might ask for like the last 4 of your credit card number or account number. Or some financial institutions now are only asking for the last 3. So they could probably tell you, and also they could tell you in detail about some recent activity. So I deal a lot with American Express. I've used them for many, many years, mostly because they have incredible, just wonderful fraud detection, and the fraud group is outstanding. But they'll verify by setting up a second call originated by me to them to confirm that they're actually talking to me. And then they'll give me some transaction details on prior transactions so that I know that they know all about me and prove it's them. And they take other steps too. I'm not going to go into all of them. But they take some pretty good steps to confirm identities both ways without revealing any confidential information. So, my little phishing buddies, they can only tell me public information and general account information, but nothing like, partial account details. So be careful, be calm, don't be pressured. They'll tell you it's urgent, but if they really, in reality, any financial service, if they were the financial service that they claimed, they can always immediately decline a suspected fraudulent transaction with or without you. Especially in this case, I verbally told them already, both those transactions are not mine. I never, I've had no large transactions with ended in even amounts. absolutely they were a fraud. At that point, if they were real, they could nuke the transaction instantly. And they didn't need me to talk to somebody else. If you're unsure how your credit card company or bank would act, don't be bashful. Just pick up the phone and call them. Say, I need to talk to somebody about what sort of information you might ask me if there was a real fraud call going on. Because I think I just had a phishing phone call. What would you ask me and what would you not ask me? And what questions could I ask you to confirm that it's you? Ask if they have an information page as to what to expect if they should call you about a fraud call. Billions of dollars are stolen every year. Actually, now it's probably over trillions of dollars at this point. And most of it's through very authentic sounding phishing calls. They may establish credibility, providing what's actually pretty available information, such as your home address. Or if it was from a social media account break-in of some sort, like I said, they'll reference personal information in detail that'll make your head spin. They know more about you than you know about you in most cases. And they'll use that to establish credibility. Again, just be calm. Tell them that you have to confirm with your financial provider, and you're going to contact them directly. Take any information they give to you. Hang up, call your bank, and be glad that they didn't trick you or pressure you into doing something silly. There's a lot more AI being used these days, and all the new AI engines can search the internet. They can find out things about you, like I said, that you forgot ever happened. They can find pictures about you and see that you're in some place that they can recognize you. Just took a trip to Florida, just took a trip to Disney World or something like that. And the people doing the calls now can say things like, well, on your recent trip to Disney, did you do any large cash transfers, to pay for things or something like that? And it makes it sound very official, like, wow, they knew I was in Disney. No, ChatGPT or Claude or any one of the other AI engines gave them this summary of you, and they used that information to establish credibility with you. Again, don't be tricked by superficial things. Get specific financial information from them to prove who they are. Make sure they prove who you are, and just be calm, call your bank, and take it from there. Don't be afraid to hang up and tell them to give them a call back. So that's it for the evening. Your homework tonight, contact your financial provider and ask if there's a web page explaining how a fraud alert call would happen and what information the bank would and would not ask of you. Extra points if you also do a quick rehearsal with yourself to try and look through some of your spam calls and then look up some of those numbers on Google or whatever your favorite search engine is and see how many are listed as potential phishing sites. You may be surprised that you've already gotten a number of calls trying to steal your financial details. So take care of yourself, be careful, and we'll get back to the other original topic on another time, because it was pretty interesting when you're away from social media. Remember all the calls as always. That's it for the evening, but do remember, please, that there is still a rather active war going on in Ukraine. UKR7.com. Links to the ways to support the people of Ukraine is super important. I'm not going to talk politics even a little tiny bit, and just leave it as if you look up some of the real sites of the people who live in Ukraine, operate in Ukraine, or fighting in Ukraine, working to save their country, you'll see that they definitely can use support in every way that's possible. Also, World Central Kitchen, another wonderful organization. They come in after disasters and provide basic services and food to people, do wonderful and amazing things. They're not a public group. They just come in, they try and use local products and produce to support the local economy as well. WCK.org, that's UKR7.com. One's a great organization. World Central Kitchen is an organization to itself. UKR7.com. Links to other organizations, both operating for really important missions in the world. But if you don't want to do something on the world scale or international scale, I'm sure there's many organizations around near where you live, either local, in your state, in your county, wherever, and talk to them, because those people can probably use donations either in money or in time. And if you're just not in a position or a mindset right now to do an actual donation, remember that one of the best ways to care for yourself is to care for others, and it doesn't have to be big. Something simple, just saying good morning, can change somebody's day. Just help them and to remember that there's somebody who's interested in them. So if you can and you're able, UKR7.com, WCK.org, tons of other organizations and hospitals and all sorts of things you can donate to, you can volunteer at, or just try and make somebody's day a little better by something simple. Just say, hope you have a good day. As always, thank you for stopping by. If you found something interesting or useful, please pass it along, and please subscribe and hit that like button. If not, please drop me a comment as what you'd like to hear. Have a great week. Remember to live the life that you dreamed of, because that's the path to true contentment. Love and encouragement to everyone. See you next week on 7everyminute.com and 7 Every Minute. Thank you. Bye-bye.